You ever find yourself in a situation where you are 100% certain about what you don't want, but you're just completely blank when someone asks what you do want? Well, it's a super common paradox, and it actually has a name, the black coffee problem. And this simple little metaphor, it reveals a really deep truth about how our brains are wired to make, or more often, avoid decisions.
Just picture it for a second. You can smell the roasted beans, you hear that low hum of conversation, the hiss of the espresso machine. You know the vibe. It's a familiar, comfortable scene. And you walk up to the counter, ready to order.
And there it is, the moment of truth. You look up at the menu, it is full of options. Lattes, cappuccinos, flat whites, Americanos. I mean, dozens of choices, dozens of potential futures for, the next 10 minutes of your life. And in that moment, your mind, it just goes blank. Well, except for one single solitary thought.
And that's it. That's the whole thing right there. You have no clear yes, but you have this crystal clear, ironclad no. This isn't just about coffee, of course. This is a perfect little window into how our brains actually work when it comes to making choices. So here's what we're going to do. We'll start by unpacking this black coffee problem itself. Then we're going to dive into why no has such a powerful psychological pull on us. We'll see how that can lead to this state of paralysis. And then, and this is the important part, we'll map out a path from just rejecting things to having a clear direction. And finally, we'll get to the one thing that's really at the heart of this whole challenge, the commitment that's behind every single real choice.
Right, so the black coffee problem, this isn't some ancient philosophy, okay? It's an anonymous metaphor that's gotten super popular in modern coaching and personal development. And the reason is, it just perfectly captures that feeling of being stuck. You know exactly what you want to get away from, but you have zero idea what you want to move towards.
So why is no so much easier? What is this weird magnetic force that makes rejecting something feel so much more certain than actually wanting something? Well, the answer, it turns out, is buried pretty deep in our psychological wiring. As the writer Dave Pollard puts it here, our decision-making is often just a process of elimination. Think about it. We're not really choosing what we want. We're just systematically vetoing all the things we know we don't want. It feels safer, right? And that's because our brains are basically wired to play defense. And there's a really powerful cognitive bias that explains exactly why.
It's called loss aversion. This was pioneered by the Nobel-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman and his partner Amos Tversky. And what their principle shows is that our brains are just fundamentally hardwired to avoid losses. Their research found that the psychological sting of losing something is about twice as powerful as the joy of gaining that exact same thing. This graph shows that imbalance perfectly. The curve for gains on the right, it goes up steadily. Yeah, gaining $100 feels pretty good. But look at the curve for losses on the left. It is way steeper. Losing that same $100 feels terrible. Our brain is basically screaming, avoid that pain. So saying no to black coffee is just our brain playing defense, trying to avoid the loss of a bad drink.
And this connects directly to a concept from therapy called avoidance behavior. It's basically a pattern where we learn to steer clear of certain situations because we're afraid of a potential bad outcome. Saying no becomes like a shield. It's a learned reflex that we use to protect ourselves from risk or disappointment or failure. But as you can probably guess, this shield has a major downside. A life strategy that's built only on no might keep you safe from some bad coffee, sure, but it also keeps you from ever finding a drink you absolutely love. It leads directly to paralysis. Just look at the contrast here. Saying no feels like you're voting against risk and bad outcomes. But notice what it shares with saying yes. Both are tied to commitment and responsibility. The big difference is, saying no is an attempt to avoid responsibility, while saying yes is an act of accepting it. One is an active retreat, and the other is an active advance. And this illustrates the trap of avoidance perfectly. When we feel down or we're uncertain about something, our natural tendency is to withdraw and just do less. But that lack of engagement, that lowers our mood even further, which then makes us want to retreat even more. It becomes this vicious cycle that can leave us feeling totally and completely stuck. So how do we break this cycle? How do we get from a vague no to a really confident yes? Well, what we need is a practical framework. The simple four-step process, which is inspired by problem-solving techniques in cognitive behavioral therapy, can really help. First, just open your mind, brainstorm every single option, no matter how wild it sounds. Second, make a list of pros and cons for your top choices. Get analytical with it. Third,
Verify the best solution by ranking them. Ask yourself, what feels both desirable and actually practical? And then finally, the most important step, enact the plan. Break it down into small, concrete actions you can take.
Okay, so this brings us to the real core insight of the entire black coffee problem. That four-step framework is super useful, but it only really works if we're honest about the real fear we're facing. Because let's be real, it's never actually about picking the wrong drink. The choice itself, the latte versus the cappuccino, this job versus that one, this city versus another, that's often just the surface-level symptom of a much, much deeper hesitation.
This is it. This is the whole thing. The real hesitation is about accepting responsibility. When you say yes to something, you are taking ownership of that outcome. If the latte you pick is terrible, well, that was your choice. If the new job doesn't work out, that's on you. Saying no keeps you safely on the sidelines. You're blameless. But saying yes, that puts you in the game. Because a true choice isn't just you saying the words. It's a commitment. It's deciding that even if the latte isn't absolutely perfect, you're going to drink it. You're going to see it through. And that level of commitment, that can feel incredibly daunting. And that is the fundamental shift we have to make. Saying what you don't want is passive avoidance, but saying what you do want, that is an active declaration of agency. It's the difference between letting your life story happen to you and choosing to be its author. So look, the black coffee problem isn't some personal failing. It's a fundamental part of how we're all wired. But understanding it, that gives us the power to move beyond it. It lets us ask the most important question of all. Beyond all the things you know you don't want, what are you truly, finally ready to say yes to?